Now, South Africa is situated in one of the busiest and prominent international sea routes. Our location geographically at the bottom of the African continent is set to present significant opportunities for trade and a thriving maritime industry, that being South Africa. Now, as you've seen throughout the morning's broadcast, this year's National Marine Week is being held here in Polokwane. The Department of Environmental Affairs is a key role player in this initiative, with a particular focus on the marine protection services and ocean governance. So to talk more about this, it's wonderful to be joined by the Minister of Environmental Affairs at this point, Ms. Edna Molewa. Good to have you, Minister. Thanks so much for being with us here on the program.
Thank you very much, Leanne, and good morning to all your viewers.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure, and we've been talking about the significance of hosting it in the inland province for the very, very first time. Took me a while to get my head around it, but now while I've been doing this broadcast, it makes all the sense in the world because, you know, the opportunities to work in this, whether it be in this career or in this particular environment, is amazing. And perhaps we're isolating inland provinces.
Indeed, we have actually started asking ourselves as a country in the first instance but why have we never focused on oceans and oceans economy in particular in the past? So South Africa has actually started focusing on the oceans economy. We've got now 4 pillars related to that. But why do we bring this to the inland provinces? Because we are now getting geared up, given the areas that we have selected for ourselves as growth points, and therefore we cannot just be found, caught napping. We've got to ensure that people inland, like these ones in Polokwane, Northwest, all over, dry land, people must then also be part and parcel of our oceans, which, by the way, they've always been part and parcel of. But this is about access to those opportunities, and you can only access them when you are exposed to them.
Yeah.
But also about transformation, because it has always been such a process that only those who are exposed to and who happen to live in those towns, cities, especially the coastal cities, are the ones who then get exposed to these opportunities and then go for those opportunities. Here in Polokwane, I bet to a good number, probably about 70% of the learners here have never seen an ocean. So that's why we thought we should bring this ocean to them simulated and with this exhibition.
Yeah, I love it. And it really is a simulated ocean. As soon as you walk in, there's big smoke machines coming down that make you feel like you're walking under the ocean, which is absolutely fantastic. Let's talk about the theme. #Oceans70 2020, decoding mysteries, optimizing opportunities.
20 years down the line, over 20 years down the line of South Africa's democratic dispensation, we are seeing that we actually have a 70%, just over 70% of the whole world being surrounded by oceans. And 20 years down the line, as South Africa, we then need to develop this special focus. And this is what the 70-20 is all about. It needs to be demystified. We've got to understand exactly what our oceans are carrying for us. I mean, here in Polokwane, there is Mapungubwe. There are 2 very significant areas where very ancient times, where during those times trade was actually done with the East Asian market. And people in this area do not quite know. Their goods were ferried through the oceans, and that's what role the oceans played in their lives. But also what's important is for us, secondly, as a country, to be able to understand the tidal movements, the temperatures of the oceans, the changes that are brought up, any possible disaster that actually may occur, so that we can be able to gear ourselves up. We're growing the economy in the oceans. We're developing the marine spaces, manufacturing of boats and ships, vessels. Here in South Africa, we would like to see that happening. We have actually even already had 2 flagged ships that docked on South Africa's, one of them has already docked on South Africa already. After such a long time of trying very hard, we're now looking at the oceans, minerals processing, as actually mining of offshore oil and gas, which other countries, by the way, have been doing for a long, long, long time. But as we do that, we need to actually ensure that we do all those economic activities within sustainability. And therefore, that's what becomes important, that we as the Department of Environment do the mapping of the ocean where these activities can actually take place. We need to develop our professions. Our young learners must now grow to be in these professions that are needed in the space of this blue economy, as we call it. So we really have to get geared up.
Yeah, and there's huge potential in it, which I'm going to talk about in a short while. But one thing I want to talk about, and you briefly touched on it, is be able to predict certain things. And it was a very sad incident that happened last week about losing those 12 fishermen near the Cape Point as they were out at sea. A storm came through, unpredictable, and it was a very tragic loss of life. We talk about research into this. I mean, are these things that we'll be able to predict in the future?
Indeed, Leanne, as I sit back here where I am and look at the time when I was still Minister of Water Affairs, you remember 10 years ago, Mozambique was hit by a huge wave of water, Absolutely. Just even before we get to the oceans. A little later, 10 years later, I found myself being able to say at night, at about past 10 at night, I had to make a call to my colleague in Mozambique and say, Ed, tomorrow at about past 10, there will be high wave of water, 6 meters high, moving at this speed, getting into your country. Yeah. And therefore be ready for it. If you're not able to be ready, let's see where we can actually help. That came from a detection. Yeah. Pre-detection that was done by our scientists. And that actually shows you how we keep growing into our ability to be able to, know and to really say quite ahead of time, this and that could be happening or will be happening at such a time. South African Weather Services does that work. Our Oceans branch does that. Science and Technology does that. Through this Maritime SABC 2, we actually go into the oceans deep, up to the Antarctica. Really, on a daily basis, our scientists taking information, gathering data for us to be able to analyze and be able to predict what may be coming. So disasters like those that happened last week, may their souls rest in peace, who lost lives, and indeed that's not a good thing, will then be able in a long run to be predicted. We are working on those issues. And as the current movements of the current are being read, those who are scientists, Dr. Maikiso should have mentioned this, that indeed what they tell me all the time is that they read the tidal movement, that if a tide turns back, when it goes to the south, especially to the Americas, back before time, they can be able to know whether we're going to have very cold winters or summers and so forth. So these scientists can be able to read in that. So that's a movement we are going through. We have buoys. I love a buoy. B-O-U-Y.
Yeah, I'm glad you said
that. That are sunk in the ocean to read the temperatures on a daily basis and really feedback to what could be happening or can happen anytime.
Fantastic. I know there's a photograph of a boy, not a boy, but as you say, it's a B-O-U-Y boy here. But we got to wrap this up. But what I'm going to wrap up is pretty much just talking about what you mentioned about the GDP. We're expecting by 2033 the maritime industry to create 1 million jobs and contribute 177 billion towards GDP. Currently it's at 4%, but that is the potential. I've got those numbers right.
You've got them right, very right, Leanne. And indeed, those are not thumb-sucked figures, by the way. We actually did a very thorough investigation in these 4 sectors in particular. By the way, we have to include tourism, which we had omitted at the time.
Indeed.
So indeed, this is just what you're saying, the economic potential, the enormous also educational possibilities that comes out of there, meaning that we also have those of our people will be in jobs. Miriam Makeba too, we're giving bursaries, by the way, in the department about 30 students per year.
Fantastic.
Those who are coming in. So we'll also be raising funds at the golf course, the golf game that's being played under Miriam Makeba SABC too. So please, let's join. South Africans, this is fantastic opportunities for us.
Minister, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program. Our Minister of Environmental Affairs, Ms. Edna Molewa, talking to us about the importance of this Marine Week. And I think you've gathered there are so many opportunities. Take them, South Africans, and enjoy it. Well, I'm going to say goodbye to our SABC2 viewers from here. Channel 404, there's another hour coming your way. Have a wonderful